Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Gypsy Poet Radio here on blogtalkradio.com/Gypsy Poet. I am the Gypsy Poet, and oh my goodness, what a great afternoon we got. Of course, I've got my wing girl, my everything. She is the most awesome person I've ever encountered on this planet. It is the great and wonderful Girl George. Say it with me, people. Girl George, are you there, Madame?
Yes, I'm here.
Wonderful. We've got a wonderful afternoon planned with the one and only Cyril Jordan of the greatest San Francisco band in the world, the Flamin' Groovy.
Live 86.
Oh, it's a live version. Okay.
It's live. I think it's in France or something.
Because I couldn't tell which version it was. The intro's different on the Capitol version, so it is also different on the Rockfield version, which is 72. And I was listening to it, and I was going, I don't know this recording.
Well, this is a live one that's on YouTube.
Well, it's pretty good.
It looks
live.
great. You look great in it. Have you seen it?
No, I've never even heard
Go to YouTube and just put in Flamin' Groovy Shake Some Action, and the video is just amazing.
Who
was singing on this? Who was singing?
That's me and that's Chris singing lead vocals. That's me and Chris. We're doing a two-part, and then Chrissy takes over on the middle part, and then we both do the chorus, you know.
And then you play the lead?
And then I play the lead.
Guitar. The guitar is fantastic.
I play the guitar, yeah.
Oh, I love the way you play. I've always loved your band. I always wanted you on my show. I had a TV show back in the 70s and 80s, and Roy Loney was on it, and Mike Wilhelm was on it millions of times because Wilhelm's an old friend. But I never could get you, and I always wanted you because I've always been a big fan of yours.
Well, it's kind of hard to get to. I'm completely off the grid. I don't have a computer or an iPhone or an iPod or an iPad or a Ziza or whatever the fuck those things are.
You just play music, huh?
Well, the trouble is that, you know, I'm a musician in America, and we all know how they treat artists here. We're not really making the most money ever since the computer's been taking our royalties. But every time I get money, I buy another guitar, you know, or I buy some paints or something like that, you know. So one of these days I'll catch up with all you guys, and I'll be able
Well,
to
see, I have a daughter. You have to have kids. I got a 35-year-old daughter that went to college, and anybody that went to college, they're really into computers, so she turned me on the computer and showed me how to use it. And she takes care of it because I don't know how to upload or, you know, get the thing to work. Her and her husband keep their computer geeks. You know, I live downstairs and take care of the grandkids, you know, when they're at work. And so they take care of the computer, and I just play with it. So you kind of have to have grandkids when you're our age to get into the computer.
Well, it's like everything else. You got to be hanging around the people that are doing it.
Yeah.
And it'll be easier, you know.
So when did you get the group together? When did the Flamin' Groovies first get together?
We started in 1965.
Wow. In San Francisco, right?
Yeah, about 2 months before the Beatles played their second show here.
Uh-huh.
And it's funny, I'm remembering all of this because I'm finishing my third column for Ugly Things right now, and 65 is the year I'm writing about.
What, you're writing a book, a biography or something?
No, I have a column in a magazine called The Ugly Things.
Oh, cool. How do we find it? Can we find it on the web, or you don't know?
Yeah, I'm sure Ugly Things is on the web, yeah. Uglythings.com.
Okay, we'll have to find it.
TheUglyThings.com. I got it already noted.
So who was in the group originally? Was you and Roy Loney?
It was, I met George, the bass player, first.
Uh-huh.
And George and I started talking band talk, and we both realized we were both in bands. And I said to George, why don't you come by and check my band out this Saturday? So he rode down that Saturday on his Honda 50, and we were going to jam, but we didn't really jam because everybody in the band was taking turns riding his Honda 50. And I remember thinking to myself, hey, come on, guys, let's play some music, you know. So anyway, George and I decided that I would come over and see his band a week later. And that Saturday evening, Roy Loney picked me up in his car, which was pretty flashy. I was in high school, and I was like 15. I didn't really know anybody that had a car.
So the Groovies got together when you were 15?
Yeah.
Wow. How old is Roy Lodi? Same? 15?
No, Roy, George, and Timmy had about 2 years on me. They were all out of high school. They were in college. And just about ready to move out of their parents' house. So they were all kind of grown up. So I was hanging out with these older guys.
And this is in San Francisco, right?
Yeah, this is in San Francisco. And we all showed up over at Tim's house, our rhythm guitar player. Tim and George were both friends of Roy's. And the three of them they had a little folk trio, I think, in 1960. So they were pretty advanced guitar players. I mean, they knew about finger picking and chord structures. I basically had been learning Chuck Berry lead breaks and the intros to rock songs. So when we got together, it was really weird because somebody said, well, what do you want to do? And I don't know who said it. Somebody said, baby, please don't go. And I went right into the intro. And then the rest of the guys just followed, and we played it all the way through. And it was perfect. And every song that was suggested that night, we went right into it. Everybody knew the material. And by the end of the evening, we had a whole set. We realized we were a band, and that was the beginning. Somehow we ended up with the name The Chosen Few, which I wasn't too jazzed about because it's a bit pretentious.
Yeah.
Attaching a phrase like that to yourself. But we ended up as The Chosen Few, and our first gig was at a church dance in Sausalito. And I remember Roy jumped off stage and did a little Jagger two-step. And we were mostly just Rolling Stones and them at that time. We didn't really play any Beatles songs. Beatles songs were a little difficult to play for most of those bands back then when we were in high school because they had three-part harmonies and the chord structures were all new, and it was just the R&B blues stuff that the Stones were doing was just easier to learn how to play, you know. So our second gig is a Battle of the Bands that KYA Radio put on at the Cow Palace.
Wow,
so,
your second gig was at the Cow Palace?
Yeah, about a month.
And you're 15?
Yeah, and this is this is about a month before the Beatles are ready to show up and play the Cow Palace. So you can imagine things were pretty exciting for me that year.
Yeah, that's amazing. How long before you got a record contract?
We got our first album ourselves because we didn't want to wait around. And there were already a few bands doing their own records. Country Joe and the Fish put out an EP on their own label, and so did Frumius Bandersnatch, who later turned into Journey. And so the Groovies went ahead and cut a 7-inch. We cut 7 songs, and that's all we had the money for. We couldn't cut a whole album, so we cut a half an album. And then we decided to put it on a 10-inch because we found a place that pressed 10-inch records. That's the size of a 78.
How did you come up with the name Flamin' Groovies? How long did it take before you changed it to that?
Well, the last Beatles show in 1966, which was at Candlestick, it was really an amazing week that week because I had been in Europe visiting with my uncle and aunt in Holland for the whole summer. And Roy got busted for selling pot to a Mercy High School girl, and he went to jail that summer. Timmy hitchhiked. He did Europe on $5 a day, and I didn't really bump into him that summer in Europe. And when I came back off the plane, Roy was at the airport, and he asked me if I wanted to see the Beatles. I said, yeah, what are you talking about? He says, I have an extra ticket. And I said, what happened? He says, me and my girlfriend broke up. So luckily, because they broke up, I got to see the last Beatles show. And the very next day, we changed our name to the Flamin' Groovies.
How did you think of it? How did it come up?
Well, it came up, there were a bunch of reasons, but I think that one of the main reasons is that we were big Lovin' Spoonful fans, okay?
Oh, I love the Lovin' Spoonfuls.
And when you say Lovin' Spoonful, you're talking 4 syllables. And I found out that John Sebastian got the name Lovin' Spoonful from a Mississippi John Hurt commercial that was done for Maxwell House Coffee in the 30s, okay? And John Hurt would say, give me that Lovin' Spoonful. I want that Lovin' Spoonful. Maxwell House Coffee, the best coffee you could drink. Lovin Spoonful, you know. So we were thinking, wow, we ought to make a crazy name like that. We really wanted it to be completely meaningless because we were extremely stoned in those days. I mean, we were dropping acid when it was legal. So the idea of flaming, the way the story goes is that I was over the place where George and Timmy lived, which was a house where a bunch of nurses had taken over this little house, and we moved in. One by one, we all moved into that place. And the place ended up being called the 11th Avenue Circus. This was Flamin' Groovies' headquarters. And this one day, after the Beatles show, I was stoned out of my head, and all I was saying all day long was groovy. If somebody said, I would go, groovy, you know, how do you feel? Groovy. You know, I feel groovy. Yeah. And Roy came in and saw me just out of my mind saying groovy. And Roy said, boy, he's a flamin' groovy. And that was it.
Perfect.
We all kind of went, whoa, the flamin' groovies. You know, everybody, all the older people who were, you know, the core of the San Francisco music scene, like Bill Graham and the Airplane, they all thought the name was just too absurd to take seriously. Bill Graham hated the name. He thought we were homosexuals and refused to book us, you know. So we had a plan that we would actually get into Bill Graham's network and end up somehow having him hire us. And the plan was, when I found out that one of the girls that was living at 11th Avenue Circus, her brother, Alfred Kramer, her name was Barbara, her brother Alfred it was Bill Graham's right-hand man. And as soon as I found this out, I told everybody, I said, we got to get Alfred to manage us. Because if Alfred's managing us, we got an into the Fillmore, right? Wrong. Because as soon as Alfred said yes, he walked out on Graham. He quit. And him and Bill had a feud, a Jewish feud going on for years after that, you know.
So that blocked you rather than made you come in.
Exactly. But in the end, that was all big talk, because when Bill needed somebody, which is exactly what happened, I think somebody backed out of a show with the Airplane and Mother Earth at Winterland, and so we got to open. That was our first Fillmore show.
Did you play the Avalon?
Oh, we played the Avalon. Oh, yeah, for sure. We must have done 6 shows at the Avalon, you know, in the years to come.
Uh-huh. How did you meet Mike Wilhelm?
Well, he was in the Charlatans.
I know he was in the I know him from the Charlatans back in about 65.
Right. That was my favorite band. I mean, us kids, we were in high school, we just looked up to these guys. We couldn't believe the way they looked. And as far as I'm concerned, Chet Helms, Janis Joplin, Big Brother, and the Charlatans were probably the first hippies.
They were. George Hunter, I think, started the whole thing, the crazy.
George Hunter, the one of the players in the Charlatans. All of these people were very artistic. They were mostly all artists and poets and players. And this clique started in Virginia City at the Red Dog Saloon. The Charlatans got a 6-week engagement in June '65 to play there. And then they came to San Francisco. And I swear to God, the minute those people came to San Francisco, everybody copied them. You know, you'd be on Haight Street. You'd be on Haight Street like 2 weeks later and look down a block and go, oh, there's Chet. And then you go, oh, no, wait a minute. That's not Chet. No, it's somebody who's wearing wire-rimmed glasses and letting his hair grow long. So he's trying to look like Chet, right? So within like 6 weeks after that, there were all these long-haired people on Haight Street, and it was like a disease. It spread. And more people, it was like getting hit by meatballs. You know, you get hit by a meatball, all of a sudden you're different. You know, boom, man. And it happened one after another. Pretty soon, there were thousands and thousands of hippies on Haight Street. You know,
that was the same thing that happened in Nashville in 1970. When we went to Nashville, they were all country. They were all trying to out-country each other. But we got there, and the place just split right open. All these hippies came out of the wall, and another Red Dog Saloon opened up. That was just for hippies. So once somebody comes in there and says, woo, everyone else says, yeah, I'm onto that.
Oh, yeah, for sure. No, it must have been the same in every city. after that, you know?
Yeah, it takes a while. Nashville didn't get going until 1971, you know. We just spread the disease from San Francisco to Nashville when we went there, you know.
Well, you know, Tennessee was part of the Easy Rider Bible Belt.
Yeah.
And, you know, those guys looked at long hairs and they pulled out their shotguns, you know.
Yeah.
So I can see why it took a little bit longer in those states.
But it's
you know,
still happening. It's always just artists, you know, the art schools, art students, you know, and they get this together. And it's still happening. There's always an underground. There's always new young guns coming up and discovering the world, you know, and putting it out there.
And finding out what they think is cool, and then they attach themselves to it. You know, It's funny because I had never been in New Orleans until 3 years ago. I started doing some gigs down in New Orleans at the House of Blues, and really fell in love with Louisiana and the South. And I began to realize something I'd never really thought about, which was the southern states were really the states that gave us rock and roll music.
Oh yeah, that's where Elvis came from, and Fats Domino, and all of them came from the South.
I mean, rock and roll is definitely born out of the Confederacy.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it is it's kind of been forgotten, you know. I mean,
and the Black Blues too came out of there, and rock came out of the Black Blues too.
And
the Mississippi Delta.
Well, I'm on an airplane flying to New Orleans, and there's this guy in the back of the plane with Elvis pompadour, and he looks like Elvis. He's got the sideburns, and his face is really good looking. His eyes are amazing. I thought to myself, and he's an older guy, right? And he's one of the last Elvis guys. I mean, there must have been Elvis guys all over the South, you know, for like 50 years. You know, people emulating that look. And this guy was one of them, and it was amazing to see this person in his prime, you know, on the plane. He was signing autographs, you know. Yeah, I knew Elvis.
There still is Elvis imitators, millions of them.
He's like, you know, claiming he was a second cousin of Elvis's or something. I'm sure this went on and on and on for years, you know.
You're going to be playing in Australia next month?
We are going to do a tour of Japan and Australia. We're leaving on April 8th, and we'll be back on April 29th. We're headlining in Japan, but we are hooking up to a tour that Blue Oyster Cult, the Hoodoo Grooves, and Peter Case are doing.
Oh, it's Peter Case. He's another friend from Nashville. I mean, from North Beach.
Oh, and I almost forgot the Buzzcocks have been added to the tour.
Oh, cool. They were with the Sex Pistols, were they?
Yeah. Well, I always had the Buzzcocks open for us in Europe. The Stranglers, the Buzzcocks, all those the Boomtown Raps. A lot of those bands, when we would come over to England, the Damned, I'd find out from fans who are the new up and coming underground bands, you know. And then we'd pick one for an opener for a tour, and they'd go on the road with us. We took the Ramones there about 17 times, opening for us. I hooked up Radio Birdman on one of our tours, and that's the way we did it back in those days.
Well, I first seen the Boomtown Rats when they were with the Pretenders. I knew Chrissie Hynde in London before she got famous, and then all of a sudden she was playing in San Francisco with that Brass in Pocket, and I went there, and the Boomtown Rats were opening for her. But she got pretty big. Did you know Chrissie Hynde?
Yeah, Chrissie was hanging around in London at that time, and a French fan, a guy named Marc Zermati, who owns Sky Dog Records, he told me about this girl that he met that's a real good singer, and she was from Oyo.
She's originally from Ohio.
I know, but he's French. He couldn't say Ohio, so he said Oyo. So I was trying to figure out Oyo. It must be somewhere in Japan, you know. But I finally met her, and I introduced her to Seymour. She came to our show in Paris, and Seymour Stein, the president of Sire Records, was there, and I introduced him to, because he asked me, he said, hey, who's that good-looking girl over there? And I said, oh, that's Chrissie Hynde. She's a singer and a writer, you know. And a couple of years later, he signed him up.
cool. So you introduced them. Well, that's really cool.
Oh, yeah. No, the Flamin' Groovies are, you know, not credited for a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff. We basically gave the Ramones their start because their manager was Linda Stein. God rest her soul. She's passed away since then. And she and I just got on like gangbusters because I had skunk weed from California. She was a pothead. And she freaked out on the stuff I had, so we clicked really, really good together. And one day she asked me, she said, you know, I'm managing a group, and I was wondering if you could help us out. Could you take the band to Europe? And I said, well, let me hear the band. Let me hear some music. And I heard it, and I said, yeah, we'll take them. And that was that first show we did with them was at the Roundhouse. That's the famous Roundhouse show that we did.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
That's really great. Oh, you played at the Mabuhay too, the punk club in San Francisco. You were there like 2 days after John Lennon died, and you guys all did John Lennon and songs. I was there.
Yeah, we did like a 2-hour tribute to John Lennon, and
that was such a sad time. Oh my God.
Oh God, I woke up at 7:30 in the evening and turned on the TV set, and they're going, we don't know if he's dead and I'm going, who's dead? What's going on? And all of a sudden it dawned on me, and just between you and I mean, the guy who did it, he should have been fed to crocodiles. I mean, what he stole from all of us is just you can't even put a price on it.
I was going to take my daughter to see that laser show downtown San Francisco, and on the way we were trying to park, and it came over the radio, and I just freaked out. I mean, I freaked out for weeks. I cried and cried and cried for weeks and weeks.
Oh, yeah, and that was a terrible time.
It was hard to get over. I love John Lennon.
A terrible time, Poor John.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote a song called Thanks, John, which I put on a Flamin' Groovies album called Rock Juice, which came out in the late 80s. But it was a tribute to John. And what I did with the song was I took titles of Beatles songs and wrote lyrics. So it's one title after another.
Oh, that's awesome. I wanted to ask a couple of questions about your music. I know if you don't mind me asking, do you enjoy writing things that are like about complex subjects, or do you want to keep it simple?
I have a lot of opinions. I think a lot about things, and I care a lot about people and America and whatever, and the image and trying to keep this place cool and not greedy. But as far as being a spokesman for these things, I'm not really into that. And I wasn't that good when I was in school with English, so lyrics to me was always like big hassle. I mean, when I wrote Take Some Action, I was working on 3 different songs, and for 3 months, I only had one section for each song, like a verse section for the idea, and they were so good, the sections, that I couldn't match another section like a good chorus, and I gave up after 3.5 months, and I put all 3 songs together, and that became Shake Some Action. Okay, so when Chris joined the band, I said to Chrissy, well, I want a songwriting partner. Why don't you write the last verse on Shake Some Action? And that's how we became a songwriting team.
That's awesome. That's really cool. With just a couple of minutes left in the show, why don't you tell us a little bit more about what some of the current things that you're doing and what you're looking forward to be doing, and any other websites that we should be checking out?
Well, basically, we got some offers last year. I hadn't seen Chris in 30 years. He moved to England, and I'm sure we would have been in touch with each other had he not been so far away. I didn't get back to England until 2011. I did a show with the A-Bones and Roy Loney doing the Groovy set in the Teenage Ed version of the band. And Chrissy came to the show, and the minute we saw each other, it was hugs and kisses and tears, and we just melted in each other's arms. So after that, we started getting offers. We got an offer from BBC One Television to do a 1-hour special if and when we're in England. And last year, we got the offer from Australia and Japan to tour, which was a pretty substantial amount of money, enough money to kickstart the band. So what we're doing is we're going to play 8 shows. Then we're coming back. We're going into the studio probably May 1st and cut a demo. And we're trying right now. We've been offered 2 shows for the Rhino Records party that should be coming up, the 40th anniversary. And I hear they're going to have some 60s like Nancy Sinatra and the Turtles and the Monkey. Cher is going to be there. So I think we might be added to that. So that might be our first American live show, either in Los Angeles at the Dean Autry Museum or somewhere in New York. I think it's B.B. King's Club in New York.
Oh, how awesome is that? Oh, my goodness. Absolutely. Well,
so that's what's going on.
Oh, okay. That's awesome.
It was great talking to you, Cyril.
Yes,
hey, thanks so much, sweetheart.
Absolutely. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, listen up. If you want to check out the Flaming Groovies, please do so on YouTube, on Facebook, and also check out Cyril Jordan's column, theuglythings.com. He's got some really amazing stuff out there. Please check out any tour dates and listings of any sort that's out there for the Flaming Groovies. Amazing music, rich textures, awesome stuff, just absolutely rings to the ears. Girl George, I want to thank you for an awesome episode of GPR. You rock, you roll, you resonate, sister. And I just can't, of course, and I just can't wait to see what's coming up next week. Okay, everyone, I am the Gypsy Poet signing off saying adio for now.